Now then guys, welcome back to Range 23, my name's Bob, and as promised in today's video we're going to be taking a look over my 22 Magnum upper receiver. We've already been through this lower in the last video where I detailed the kind of 22 long rifle setup that goes hand in hand with this, so definitely check that video out if you haven't done already. It's a great watch guys, incredibly well produced, very handsome presenter, so yeah, get on it now, go give it a watch. So guys, I've had this rifle for about 5 years now, or this upper. And you can instantly see the resemblance to my 22 long rifle upper receiver, which is brilliant because it means I can reuse all the same jokes in this video as I did in that one. But this started life as a bare upper receiver bought from Northwest Custom Parts. At the time it was running the Raven hardware from the US, but over the years it's literally had every single part changed out. There is not an original part left on this. It's basically like the Trigger's broom of my collection. So let's crack on and take a look at the hardware and then the setup of the rifle. So when I first got my rifle, it was pretty much unshootable. It would just kind of jam up after maybe 2 or 3 rounds. It was completely unusable running that Raven hardware. It took me about a year or so of kind of messing about with a gun to get it running something like reliable. But I got there in the end. Still had the occasional hiccup, but certainly a lot better than it was. I did also swap out the receiver quite early on in the build just to alleviate some issues, and I swapped that to an Aero forged receiver. Nothing fancy, but it's built to spec and it's well finished. It works fine. A little bit of rattle to it, same as on my 22 long rifle build, but it doesn't really bother me. When I swapped that receiver, I did have to open up the ejection port on it. I just had to mill away about, I think, 3mm, 4mm, something like that, just to make the ejection port slightly larger. Due to the placement of the extractor on those Gen 1 WMR bolts, you just need a slightly larger ejection port because they're originally designed, the Raven was originally designed for like a custom side charging upper. So apart from that little bit of machining on the upper receiver, nothing else is needed to get this gear running in like a standard kind of mil-spec build, if you will. And I've not really done anything to it either since then. The only thing I've done with the bolt is just slightly reprofile the hammer reset lug that sits underneath the bolt, just because it works slightly better with my Hyperfire trigger. The Gen 2 rifles now, the Gen 2s from Guncraft have now alleviated that issue. They've got a much longer reset lug on them to work with a lot more aftermarket hammers. If you want to know the differences between kind of the Gen 1s and Gen 2s from Guncraft, I've got videos on them both, so definitely check them out, as I've got a video on the Northwest Custom Parts as well. Definitely check them out, guys, if you're into 22 Magnum or just bored over Christmas. But yeah, apart from that, the bolt is pretty much stock. The only other thing I've changed out on it is the extractor. The extractor is now a Volquartsen extractor because my original Guncraft one got sent into lower Earth orbit via a case head failure. And I think it's still knocking around out there actually. I think it does like a flyby, the ISS, 2 or 3 times a day, I think they tell me. But yeah, apart from that, the rifle, the running gear at least, is stock, standard, factory. Who is this guy? So onto the barrel. This one is a border barrel, now Phoenix I believe. It was an 18-inch heavy profile barrel, obviously chambered in 22 Magnum, 1 in 14 twist rate, can't remember the material of it. But it has since been cut back down to about 16 inches and also thinned off. It's been on a diet. That work was done by Mr. Dave Wild of Valkyrie Rifles. Anyone who shoots CSR or PRS or anything like that should probably be familiar with Dave. He makes competition winning guns, he's a fantastic turner, and he's done an absolutely sublime job on this barrel. He's took about 1/3 of the weight off of it, obviously matched it to the length of the handguard, cut crown and rethreaded it. It shoots brilliantly, still shoots just as well as it did from factory. So yeah, really good job there. And on the end, I'm also running a VG6 Gamma brake. That is just a little small profile muzzle brake. It's actually the same footprint as an A2 Baird cage, but obviously you get the benefits of a muzzle brake instead of a flash hider. And just like the 22 long rifle build, the barrel is covered by a Danny Defense DDM4 quad rail, but this one's even bigger, because you know what's better than a 10-inch quad rail? A 15-inch quad rail. So yeah, absolutely love these things. Like I say, this was exactly the same, basically just an elongated one. You've got the 4 QD mounting points on there, obviously pick rail on every side, quad rail gang. It's T-marked, the finish is great, it's just a super cool rail. Really big, really chunky, you know, triple C thick.
A thick king.
Thing's just an absolute unit. And the nice thing about this super long quad rail is if I want to run like a bipod on the end, which I do quite regular to be fair if I'm shooting groups, or certainly if I'm going out like doing a bit of vermin control, something like that with this gun, is it doesn't interfere with my natural hand placement on the gun. I can still kind of get up on there, I can still get to my light and stuff like that if I'm doing night shooting. So just moving quickly back to the upper receiver, look at the hardware on there. We're nothing fancy guys, just got a standard mil-spec dust cover on there, and then another Radian Raptor charging handle. Actually, that's a Raptor by AXTS, or whatever they used to be called before they were Radian. Quite a few years old, that one. But it's holding up really well. We also do have, for anyone that's interested, working forward assist. If I can get it to sit somewhat like, there we go. A working forward assist on the rifle. The bolt is cut for it. Not everybody's thing, but I know a lot of you like that. It's like to tap it, it makes you happy. So unlike a 22 long rifle build, the 22 Magnums do utilise the buffer tube and the buffer and the spring in there. The buffer is slightly longer, it just limits the travel on there, just because it doesn't need to reciprocate as far as a 223, and it's slightly lighter weight as well. I did actually custom turn a little aluminium buffer, a little hollow buffer that I can change the weight of for running like suppressed or running with heavier rounds, things like that. It just helps to kind of tune the action, you get less gas and shit coming back, it just reduces parts wear. Don't run it all the time. If I'm running the gun in this setup, I'll just use the standard buffer that came with the gun. So yeah, now that's all out the way guys, let's take a look at the rest of the setup, the optics, the furniture, accessories on this build. Let's go! So let's look at the light, because that's kind of the big one, I guess. This is a bit of a Frankenstein build. We've got an Arasaka body coupled with an Arasaka mount, coupled to a Surefire end cap and a Surefire tape switch. All that's topped off with a Malkov Devices light head. And this is a bit of an unusual light head. It's the EX2H or something, EX2T or something it's called. A bit of an unusual one. It's only a 500 lumen output, which, to be honest, is pretty anemic for a lot of modern lights, but it also puts out 55,000 candela, which is kind of up there with the big boys. So it's the things like an absolute freaking laser beam. Freaking laser beam! And you'd think it wouldn't be that usable, but it is. It doesn't have as much spill as some of the more modern lights from Cloud and Mod Light and things, but it's still more than usable, and it also has the reach to get out to like 150 odd plus yards. So yeah, I quite like this light. It runs off either a single 16650 rechargeable battery or two CR123As, so it is dual fuel as well if that's your thing. It also has quite a decent runtime with it being such a low output, and also it runs really cool as well, which compared to a lot of the big boys that can get up to some high temperatures if you're using them quite a lot. Moving underneath the handguard, we've got another BCM grip, angled the wrong way, oh my god. But yeah, just used as a hand stop, giving me that placement, especially for getting on the light panel and stuff like that, make sure it's consistent. Good for a little foot, barricade stop, all that stuff. And you can see here I've just got a couple of hairbands from our lass's dressing table, and I just use them to stow the sling if ever I'm sticking a sling on this gun, and just put it under there, and it works quite well. Don't have to worry about heat so much with a WMR, it's never going to get hot enough to melt the elastic in them. Now then guys, it turns out my microphone cut out just after that last section, so everything I shot was completely silent, which, to be honest, some of you probably prefer that, but I'm reshooting it now. It's a bit later on, it's a lot colder, hence the hat, and you can probably see my breath as well. But we just about got through kind of the hardware and the accessories on the gun. We'll talk a little bit about optics now, because that's, I think, roughly where my microphone cut out. So you can see on this rifle, very similar to my 22 build, I am running the Magpul M-Dust Pro iron sights. The stay on this gun, again, is kind of a permanent feature realistically for when I'm swapping optics out and stuff, so I've got something zero to the gun. I like them for all the reasons we discussed in the last video. Obviously on this rifle they do have a longer sight radius, with this being a longer rail, so they are a little bit more precise on this gun, which is definitely appreciated. But in terms of actual optics, what I'm running right now on this one, and I have been for, I think, the last about 18 months, I want to say, is a Swamp Fox Arrowhead 1:10 by 24 LPVO. Very nice optic actually, I quite like it for a budget optic. It's got a lot of features, and I think it eclipses a lot of other optics in this price bracket. It is right at the low end though, it's about 500 quid or just under 500 quid. I think when I bought this, prices might be different now. But yeah, it's not the best optic out there, but it works quite well for me. I quite like it at range. It's very precise at range. It's got a nice reticle, which allows you to get them group sizes nice and tight. for an LPVO, which is quite good. This is the mil reticle, which is the one that's slightly more precise. That is mounted up in a worn X-Scale cantilever mount. That is an absolute height mount as well, so it's like putting a 147 height over the rail, which is fine, it works, but personally I'm starting to prefer my optics higher up, and so in the future I'll probably end up swapping this out to maybe like a 153 or maybe even a 193 or whatever, something a little bit higher. And as well as that LPVO, guys, I am also running an offset red dot sight on this rifle. The one I've gone for is just a little Shield SMS. Really cool little sight, really handy. Very lightweight sight, no controls or anything like that. You literally stick a battery in it, zero it on the rifle, and that's it. You just set and forget it. It's got like an auto brightness feature on it. That is mounted up on a Arisaka offset red dot mount. Again, really like their mounts. I've got a separate video on them if you want to check that out. They're fully user configurable, which I like, so you can set them on the right or left side of the gun, depending if you're left-handed. But they work quite well at that. And you can also set them between 35 and 45 degree offset as well, which is cool, so you can kind of tailor them to the optic you're using. You know, if you've got a permanently magnified optic with a big bell housing or something like that you need to clear, or like for instance what I've got set up here with my LPVO, I've got it sat at the 35 degree position, which tucks it in closer to the optic, closer to the gun, which I like for a couple of reasons. One, it's not sat so far outboard that it runs the risk of getting snagged or bashed or whatever as much as it is in this position, and two, it means I don't have to roll the gun as far over when I'm transitioning. I can just give it a quick little flick and I'm on the dot. Really quite like that. It will depend on, like I say, on turret clearance and things like that, but it's quite cool that you can configure it yourself. So that's it, guys. That is my kind of 22 Magnum setup. Really good, fun gun to shoot. I don't shoot this anywhere near as much as I should realistically. It's just super fun. You do get a lot more feedback than a 22 long rifle in terms of kind of like kick, recoil, whatever you want to call it. This is a lot closer to like a semi-automatic 223, like a gas AR15 if you've ever shot one of them. Obviously, the 22 Magnum has a lot less energy than a 223 cartridge, but because this is a direct blowback action with a great big heavy bolt knocking about in there, the kind of kick you get in the shoulder is, I'd say it's comparable. It's a different impulse. This is a lot more snappy, a lot more instantaneous, more of like a jab than a gentle push that you get from a gas gun, gas 223 gun. But certainly compared to a 22 long rifle, you do get a lot more feedback from this. What's nice as well is the 22 Magnum does have the legs to push out a little bit further than the 22 long rifle. I've kind of dinged steels quite consistently with this at about 300-ish yards, 280, 300 I think it was. In terms of accuracy, the guns are really superbly accurate. I think the guns are more accurate than the ammunition, if that makes sense. You're shooting kind of factory rimfire ammunition, WMR, it's often in short supply. But I've found with the right ammunition and the right conditions, even with me behind the trigger, every kind of WMR AR15 I've tried, at 3 at the minute, I'm up to, has all grouped consistently an inch in good conditions. I think the Guncraft Gen 2, I think actually I grouped that about 1.5 inch, 1.5 MOA, but it was a bit choppy out there wind-wise. In terms of reliability, still pretty good on this one. This is a Gen 1. The Gen 2 Guncrafts, I've seen a marked improvement in reliability. They've done a lot of little tweaks and changes in there just to get it running more reliably. But this gun has the occasional failure, but nothing really that bothers me. Certainly nothing like enough to kind of want to upgrade to a Gen 2. It runs really well. One of the biggest changes you can make is running the upgraded feed lips with these. If you run one of these rifles and you haven't using those feed lips, it's definitely worth doing, guys. It'll cut your failure rate right down. But yeah, I think that's about it really. The only kind of little niggles I've got with it would be the magazines, the Black Dog magazines. I always say this, you're probably bored of me saying this, but they are fairly low capacity and there is no true last round bolt hold open feature with them. Obviously I made an elongated magazine. I think this is like a 23 rounder, just like kind of a very, very rough prototype I made a few years ago. And I've also given the gun bolt lock capability. Probably just broke the mic there, dropping the bolt. But yeah, Guncraft are coming out with their kind of clamshell magazine extensions, which again, I've got a video on if you haven't already seen that, definitely worth checking it out. And there are also some new magazines coming to market, advertised, I think they're about 25 round capacity, and supposedly they have a last round bolt hold open. I've not actually seen any working demonstrations on them yet or been hands on with them. A lot of you guys were asking me about them as soon as they were announced. You know, have you had any time on these? Are you getting one in? If I can get one in, guys, I will do, and I'll do a video on it absolutely for you. But as of yet, I don't know, is the honest answer. I know as much as you guys with them. Supposedly 25 round magazine with a full working last round bolt hold open functionality. Apparently there is some modification work needed in the gun. I believe the feed ramp needs to be moved. Anyway, that's a video for another occasion. We're just talking about this setup because you guys were asking about it. So yeah, that is pretty much it on this, guys. I can't think of much else I can really tell you about it. It's a great fun gun to shoot. It's capable as well. It's pretty reliable for what it is. It's heavy as shit. Yeah. So there you go, guys. That is my 22 Magnum upper receiver build. I hope that's answered some of the questions you guys had on it. Certainly not the best build by any stretch of the imagination. It's very, very weighty, certainly for what it is, you know, a rimfire build. But it works for me. And that's what matters, guys. Like I was saying in the last video, you know, find something that works for you. Don't worry all that much about what other people run on the guns or what other people tell you should run on yours, you know, for shooting competition or whatever it might be. Find something that works for yourself. Take people's advice, certainly on the internet, with a pinch of salt. Find something that works for you. And that goes for me as well, guys. Take my advice with a pinch of salt, right? Who am I to tell you what's good and what's bad? You know, I'm just a big northern chimp. So, yeah, what the hell do I know, right? But anyway, guys, that's the video. Like I said, I hope you've liked that or at least found it useful. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. Any questions or comments you've got, just get down there in the comments section and ask away, guys. I always do my best to get back to you guys. And yeah, as always, guys, thanks very much for watching. It's be coming out in the new year, I think, this video, probably early new year. So happy new year, guys. Hope 2023 is good for all of us. Certainly got a lot of good things coming up on the channel, so definitely stay tuned. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Can you guys see my breath? I feel like I can see my breath. It's so cold in the studio right now.